Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the second update 1.97 dev server, and it's time to have a look at a new Swedish premium. This is the Mörkö-Morane, or the Mörkö-Morane, and what it is a rank 2 battle rating 1.7 little premium that you can find in the Swedish tech tree at rank 2. It also joins its brother the Pyramidski as another Finnish plane that is in this tech tree, and as you can see it's another premium, so it is nice to see that. On top of this as well, it's a rank 2 premium. Sweden didn't have a rank 2 premium before this, and it's nice to see that it's different from the rest. One of the problems that I felt China had, if you have a look at a lot of their premiums, is that, well, they're just kind of copies of pre-existing vehicles. When it comes to the Mörkö-Morane, it may be based off another vehicle in the form of the MS-406 from the French, or the MS-410. It is its own unique vehicle, which is lovely to see. So, for some reason, the dev server keeps changing all of my stuff back to different battles, so I'm going to keep changing it back. And as you can see from this, it has access to some pretty fun weaponry. Has a 12.7mm Berezin UB machine gun right here, and then access to two 7.5mm Mac 1934s. Not a ton of ammunition, 600 rounds for the Macs, and then 230 for the 12.7, but that 12.7 is incredibly deadly if left to its own devices. The engine is the Hispano Suiza 12Y31 12-cylinder inline. It's got water cooling, 1020 horsepower overall, and a big old fuel tank just in front of the pilot as well, and some liquid and oil cooling systems to boot. Looking at the armor, there is no armor on this vehicle. It is an MS vehicle after all, and it's just a heavily modified one, of course, which is kind of nice, but overall you're not getting anything from that in terms of armor. Looking at the modifications, this thing has no secondary armament, so it's stuck with what it's got. It's stuck with the offensive 7.5mm, which actually do get some pretty nice belts. The tracer belt used to be the one that I used to run, but since a lot of machines around 1.7 actually have some semblance of armor, the only reason to run this is because it looks pretty with all the white traces, or if you want to try and set fires. I would actually recommend the stealth belt, just because the AP does way more damage than the IT, and also your main damage dealer is obviously going to be this 12.7, but it's nice to have, you know, something on top of it. When it comes to the 12.7mm, I mean, it's a Soviet 12.7. All of the belts are good. Like, there isn't really a bad one here, apart from maybe the default, which is worse than the others. Since it's a premium, you get all of these modifications for free. You get it fully spaded as it goes along. And one of the things I like to see about premiums is it actually worth picking up if you want to grind through some aspects of the tech tree that aren't very kosher? The problem is with the Swedish tech tree, a lot of the early ranks of it are actually really fun. So the B3C is a good bomber. This line in general, after you get past the J11, is pretty fun. The J22 is a wonderful aircraft along with its brother. The J20 is serviceable, and the J21s are pretty good as well. So is the B18 and B18A. So when I look at it, and when I think about, okay, is this vehicle any good for researching, you know, vehicles that might be a little bit rough? Like, let's say if you get like the Act 3 researching through a bunch of these vehicles, it doesn't really feel that way for Sweden. So if you're picking it up to grind through some stuff, I would probably say it's not worth it. It may only be worth it since it's a unique plane, and also it's a Finnish plane, and it's also really nice to see. So that would be really my only recommendation when it comes to it. Obviously it depends on the cost of the vehicle. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of being on the dev server for me is I'm part of the content creator program, so I get everything unlocked, so I can't see the prices for certain things such as the Mörkö-Morane, so I apologize for that, and we'll have to see when it comes into the game what it will look like. The fact is, when we have a look at this machine, the main thing that we have to remind ourselves of is that this machine is, at the end of the day, a MS-4 series of French aircraft, which the Finnish, you know, souped up with steroids. You know, adding the guns, adding the better engine, and all of these things is really nice, but it's still only a 406. So when it comes to general maneuverability, general versatility of the vehicle, it's going to be lacking in a lot of ways. At least it has war emergency power. It also has a pretty nice cockpit to it as well, which is really nice. And you can see, you know, the turning areas closing the cockpit as well. You've got all of the really nice, dials and speedometer and all of that stuff, and also a pretty cool gear stick which reacts to if you're shooting your guns or not. So that's lovely. And then you've got, of course, your little hand down there as well. So all of the instruments and everything work really well. The cockpit is lovely. But when we talk about the general use of this vehicle, oh my, you can see all, oh, hello, Jesus Christ. But when I think about the MS-406, or when I think about an MS-410, I remember the times when I ground through the tree for the French. I remember playing those vehicles. I remember getting outdone by just superior vehicles. I remember playing, you know, all those vehicles against stuff like HE-100s, against stuff like the early P-47s when they were about. And it just wasn't fun. It wasn't a great gameplay experience because I always felt like I was up against it because those vehicles were faster than me, they were more maneuverable than me, and the only thing I could maybe have over them was firepower. And generally when it comes to aerialistic, which is the main game mode that I play, that doesn't really cut it. The aerialistic key is always positioning, and it is always being able to get into a position to get your guns on convergence in order to do a ton of damage. So therefore, the initial step, which is getting an advantage over the enemy, is the most important part. And this vehicle, along with many others in the French tree, struggled with that. Now luckily, when it comes to the Finnish version is a little bit better than its French compatriots, because it has access to slightly better weaponry. I would actually definitely take the 12.7 over the... I would definitely take the 12.7 over the 20mm, the 404. And also, another thing to take into account with it is with this slightly more improved engine, it should be a little bit easier at maneuvering and a little bit easier at getting on target. So overall, you're looking at a vehicle... What the hell was that noise? You're looking at a vehicle which should perform a hell of a lot better than its compatriots, but at a pretty similar BR to them. So I think even though it's not going to be great against the meta vehicles, because it just isn't. Those vehicles such as the CW21 at this BR, the HE-100, even stuff like the P-36s, depending on how they're played, these are all vehicles which play incredibly nicely. Even stuff like the Ki-44s and the Ki-43s of these around these BRs are very dominant. This machine is not going to touch them. But as a little fun premium that maybe you take out every so often to play with mates or to, you know, grind through or get some SL, I don't think it's a terrible idea. If you're looking for a vehicle which is going to grind through tech trees, there are just better ones in the Swedish one. The Pyramirski and the J29 are going to be much better for that, whereas this is just more of a fun vehicle, I suppose. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with using a vehicle for the fun factor, but at the end of the day, what you want your premiums to do is either be incredibly fun, incredibly powerful, or just really, really good at getting you SL or getting you RP. And I don't think this one falls into too many of those categories. I would probably take the J22 if I wanted the fun factor, just because it's a very fun plane with some really nice guns on it, and also, you know, the J21s because they're just so weird and wonderful, where this is much more of a standard plane, which, you know, you would see, Jesus Christ, that you would see out of many other countries. I am still very glad to see it though. One of the things that is not really lacking, but it was kind of interesting when Gaji made the decision that they were going to marry Sweden and Finland into the same tech tree. And at least right now, it's incredibly Swedish dominated. So having more... oh, that wasn't very nice. Having more vehicles which are of Finnish descent, I think is great for it. I think having more of these would be lovely to see. I don't think they should all be premiums though. It would be nice just to see some in the tech tree. There is obviously that AA which was added, which is Swedish born but was used by the Finns, so at least there's that. And after talking to many people, including some Danish people, some South Africans, when they talk about the Roycats with the Dutch, with the K2 and also their machines, I have realized over this last year how important it is to have at least some representation in the game when it comes to different nations. I never thought it was such a big factor for so many people to see their countries' vehicles, seen in the game. Because obviously, being from Britain, being from a country which is heavily represented in War Thunder, it never really crossed my mind. But when the Roycat was added, or the Roycat, when the Finnish, the Piramiski was added, when the other machines were added, such as even the TAM, I saw this explosion of people who I'd never really talked to before, or never really had chats with, who were massively interested in these vehicles. And it turns out because it was a little bit of pride of the nation. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with a company wanting to add that into the game when it comes to, War Thunder, because what it means is, people want to play the vehicles, people get to experience stuff that they've only seen in their countries in real life. But it would be nice if some of them were a little bit less premium. Like, instead of more IAR 81Cs, instead of more, Roycat 105s, why not have more Roycat 76s? Why not have more machines which are of other nations but in other tech trees? And I think it can be done. I think it is definitely something that should be strived for. And with this machine being in the game, it's obviously another step towards that. But I think this could easily be put in the tech tree just as another vehicle. And then maybe we could have had another version of something which could have then become the premium, which would have suited a little bit better. But we'll have to see in the future. It's still... God damn it. It's still really nice to see it in the game, and I'm happy to see it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I just want to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.